Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Let's go!
The barbell hasn't changed in over 100 years. I can take a 25-pound plate and we'll go out on the turf and I'll have you hating life. We talk about straining your gut, pushing past that comfort level. I want a lot of energy. What better breeding ground is there for being a success in life than the weight room?
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 318. I want to thank you guys for listening each week. Really appreciate those of you that like, share, comment. Just helps us continue to highlight the great people that we have in our profession. Also want to thank our sponsor, Train Heroic, for bringing these episodes to you for free. Only partner with companies that I believe in both the people and the product, and think the world of Train Heroic as a product, but I think even more about the people that are in the company. So if you're in the market, reach out to them. If not, just let them know how much you appreciate them the next time you see them. This week, I'm joined by a buddy of mine, Lance Walker. He's the executive VP and global performance director at Michael Johnson's. Just a guy that has given continuously to the profession through speaking, creating jobs, all those types of things, but just at the forefront and a leader in the profession. And thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, thank you. It's a cool opportunity. I've been following you for a long time.
Lance, you and I have spoken at a bunch of conferences together. You've been a handful of places. You've worked with a who's who of athletes in multiple sports, and both at professional level and then the Olympic level. Either which experience or which sport has had the biggest impact on the coach that you are today?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, it's impacting me, right? I think that's something you always say on these, and I hear your coaches talk about how much impact we have on those that we work with. I think I've been impacted more than all my other athletes combined. I think it's every day I grow from my interaction, whether it was with athletes or patients as a physical therapist, or now working with coaches and organizations. Every day I'm impacted. So I feel really fortunate and blessed that I still feel like I'm getting resistance training on my ego and my aptitudes every day because of those interactions. But I think one of the most impactful things that happened to me along my coaching career, and hopefully young coaches or coaches that are just starting out will take this to heart, was working with kids, was working with high school and junior high athletes at a little place called Cassidy School. It's up the road here at Oklahoma City, where they wanted to start a strength conditioning program from scratch. They wanted to integrate sports medicine. They were trying to compete down here in Dallas with all these huge private schools, and they brought me in. I'd been a physical therapist on the East Coast, and I'd worked at Oklahoma as a strength conditioning coach. And they said, look, we want to build it from scratch. And oh, by the way, these are multi-sport kids. We're going to start at age 10. We're going to work our way all the way up. And the private school is very, very difficult academically. So don't come in here thinking this is a sports school. This is an academics first school. And we've never done it before. So go. And what an experience, from learning setting up weight rooms and, your company play flooring and all that stuff, all the way to dealing with parents, to dealing with culture. What's the culture going to be like, to doing things outside of sport that they had never done before. They'd never lifted weights. They'd never done off-season programming. It was play your sport, then go on to the next sport, then go on to the next sport. Having something that was integrated with a multi-sport athlete, also integrated with an amazing physical education program that was basically an antique, that was a leftover from the old, really good PE programs of the previous century, were still intact.
Awesome.
And so learning all that, but then more than all that was learning how to deal with kids as they transition from younger ages into the high school, and then transitioning into college. And now some of those kids, as you and I talk about a lot, is the legacy of those kids that we talk to now that have kids of their own now. And hell, I'm getting emotional talking about it, but it's the impact that we make on them. Absolutely, no doubt about it. They thank you for that, and they love you for it. They accept your mistakes when you apologize to them. You say, hey man, that was really dumb of me to do what I was doing with you when you were 18. I'm really sorry about that. But inevitably, I'm always the one thanking them for the impact that they've made. And I remember back at almost every athlete, when I have those conversations, I can remember an instance where that athlete or that team that athlete was a part of made an impact in my life that's affecting my ability to be a better dad, a better whatever I am now, a vice president, and now maybe a better therapist and a coach. So it's those younger years as a younger coach dealing with those younger athletes that are now older that's probably made the biggest impact.
Great, 100%. I always talk about those mistakes. You mentioned mistakes, and I think maybe that's just as we've gotten older, we're more confident in sharing our insecurities or our vulnerabilities. But I think that's one of the most important things is learning from other people's mistakes, and as you've gone through your career, I mean, we still make mistakes even to this day. But what's one of the biggest mistakes you made and how you learn from it?
Gosh, yeah, I think one is not checking my ego early enough in my career. I think we all have egos, and I don't think ego is necessarily a bad thing to have. I think it's okay as long as it's balanced. I was way out of balance for a long time. I probably still am out of balance. But having enough blind spots for a long enough period of time, I think really, suppressed some of my potential growth as a human, but also as a coach and a therapist, and was lucky enough to have some friends in my corner that identified those blind spots, and so thankful for those folks and for identifying the blind spot, but then saying, you know what, you need more people in your life that will identify those blind spots, because you're a raving lunatic sometimes when it comes to this, or you're an idiot or we hate it when you do that, and it's really looking back on yourself through those lenses and going, man, I got a lot to work on, with my own ego. And so it's not a mistake, I guess. Is it self-awareness, I guess? I don't know how you become self-aware, but right. I blame myself for that now. Maybe 10 years ago, I'd have blamed somebody else for me not being more self-aware, but that's been my biggest mistake, is not embracing that self-awareness early enough.
Right.
Now I've embraced it so much that maybe I've tipped out of balance. Now you lose some of your, I don't know, you probably experienced this too. You lose some of your moxie. You lose some of your, I've got the world by the tail kind of, that made us probably get to where we were.
Right.
I feel like I lose grip on that tail every day. I mean, I have lower self-confidence now than at any point in my entire career. And tomorrow I'll be less self-confident about what I'm doing than I was today. And part of me thinks that's healthy. 20 years ago, I'd have said that's crazy. But now I feel like that's growth for me, is every day I get a little less self-confident, which opens me up. It allows me to learn from other people, see the genius in every single person. I saw a genius in a custodian last night at Target, for crying out loud, that I was like, oh my gosh, that's the way they were mopping that floor was unbelievable. And he didn't see me watching him. And so I can see the genius in that, and I want to learn from that. And it's exciting for me to think about the next 10 years if I can hopefully continue that, but also helps those people, that'll identify the continuation of a lack of self-awareness and ego that I know I still have.
I couldn't agree more. I had a coach, a mentor of mine that would always say that, as he got older in the profession, he's just learning to ask the right questions, let alone have any of the answers. And
yeah, and not asking a question, waiting for them to stop talking so you can start talking again.
100%.
Yeah,
I do agree with you that I think you have to have. You have to be a little skewed to be successful, right? You can't. I mean, you can't be too balanced and not be, have enough attention towards your craft or, your job or whatever it may be. But there's seasons of life that you have to, when you don't have kids, you better be working your balls off. But when you have kids, you better shift a little bit, and I agree with you 100%. Yeah. Something that you and I talk about, especially as vice presidents in companies now, creating systems and processes, has become so important to try to replicate and quality control. And it's really something I wish I would have done a better job of when I was, coaching every single day. Talk a little bit about how you've become better at creating systems and taking the time to do that, knowing that it's going to pay dividends down the road.
Yeah, I'm becoming better at that, because without that, you don't have a real company, right? I mean, you have a shop that people come and do training, and I think it's probably a product of what I grew up around, and you probably did as well. Is it was more of an apprenticeship development that we went through as young coaches. How do I know where things are, what to do? I was an apprentice of some really great folks, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. But it wasn't a policies and procedures manual that they gave me, or a systems approach. It was me and you learning on the fly every day, watching, paying attention, making mistakes, tons of mistakes, but then ultimately walking away with what you had was an internal system that still wasn't in a policy and procedures manual for somebody to replicate. And then guess what I do then as a part owner in this company? I do the same dadgum thing when I have this company. As I set up the same apprenticeship program, we're going to do this by apprenticeship. And luckily for us as a company, we learned early on that standard operating process and procedure was a must. You may had to have that to replicate a business. You may not have to have that in a, at a high school, Cassidy School. I may not have to have a policies and procedures manual for the strength conditioning program at Cassidy High School in Oklahoma City. But at Michael Johnson Performance, you're absolutely right. So we have policies. Those policies are constantly having to be updated and amended. And then the procedures that follow along those things, so policy and procedure, understanding those two things aren't the same. And then ultimately what you pull away from then is also you create that system, that structure that is more, for me anyway, is less of a very dogmatic methodology. It's very much a templated system, so that a coach that I hire, a therapist that I hire, can come in and they can be really good at what they do and that they like to do, but it still fits in the bumper plate or the bumpers of the or the lanes, if you will, of the system. Sure. And as long as that's set up in a way that they know where we start, where we want to finish, what a regression and a progression looks like, what are our core values as a company, and they can fit inside of a template. You can hopefully walk into MJP, whether it's here or in Philippines or in China somewhere, and you can walk in and go, hey, they're doing physical therapy the MJP way, or they're doing MJP performance training. Now, exactly what are they doing, rep by rep, set by set? We got coaches out there working with 12-year-olds right now, 2 different groups. They're doing similar things, but to the naked eye, you're looking at it. Those are 2 completely different things. But to the studied eye, you would walk in and go, it'd be like walking into a restaurant saying, they're both serving barbecue. Now, this guy's doing Thai barbecue, and this guy over here is doing good old-fashioned Virginia barbecue, but they're both making barbecue today. And the system's set up so today is a barbecue day.
Right.
And so I think for me, it was not being too dogmatic and sort of, you got to recipe, got to put the recipe down for these guys, because you're not going to get any good chefs, I don't think, coming in and cooking off of a recipe. They're going to want to put their flair on things. And so our system is unique in a way that it's not as fast to replicate, because it is more of a templated system and not a very dogmatic this, then that. Now, I'll tell you this. What I did learn early on too was a lot of these young coaches that come in that we hire, and we get a lot of developmental coaches in here, they want a base system that they can fall back to.
100%.
So it's kind of, somebody said this, I don't know who said it, maybe somebody on your podcast said, it's like we're going to climb Mount Everest today, right? There's a red rope that goes up Mount Everest on that south face. And if I'm climbing Mount Everest today, you and me, we're probably hand over hand in that red rope all the way to the top. We're not picking our own spots. But as we learn, as we get better, we're probably going to deviate off of that at certain points. Maybe our crampons are a little bit better for this, but we're always going to keep our eye on that red rope. We're not going to get all the way over to the north face where there's no rope. But the idea there is that in our systems, let's create that red rope that'll get you to the top 80% of the time with 80% of the people that you train for 80% of the results that you're looking for. And then you as a specialist, you can get on those standard deviations away from that red rope if you're looking at the bell curve of things statistically. Right. And I think a lot of our coaches have grown through this system because initially they've got the confidence developed that they're going to get to the top of Mount Everest 80% of the time, 80% of the results that we're looking for with 80% of the people. But then they start to find out, oh, well, you know what? I really like, I don't know, kettlebells in this instance. You know what? I can't stand kettlebells. Nothing personal. I just don't have as much experience with them.
Sure.
But this coach is using kettlebells and this coach is using whatever, isoinertial things or whatever. We're all trying to climb Mount Everest. And ultimately, when they're able to kind of specialize and make it a little bit more specific on the top and tails of the standard deviation of the people they're working with, coupled with their expertise, man, we get tremendous results. And that's kind of what we're known for is tremendous results. Anybody can get somebody better in this profession. It's a low barrier of entry, unfortunately. So what we've kind of hung our hat on is that everybody's going to get 1 to 3% better in that 6 weeks. Congratulations.
Right.
Let's compare ourselves against that 1 to 3% that any idiot with a whistle and a stopwatch is probably going to get out of this kid or this NFL athlete or whatever. And in doing so, it's forced us to create a system that allows for that coach, that specialist to work inside of that bell curve, but also have the confidence to know, where that red rope is at all times.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I haven't met a single coach that has had 100% confidence in their system, in their programming ability.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I would always say to my coaches that there's creativity and confidence within structure. And so if you provide a base structure, that allows them to not feel like they're going to get too far off the rails to where they can be creative or they can be confident in what they're teaching. And
Exactly right. I was that way as a physical therapist too. My first days in the clinic, I mean, I was scared to death. I mean, I was scared to death. And thank goodness I had a mentor that he set up, some guide rails for me. And after a while, it was like training wheels. I took those things off. But man, if it wouldn't have been for that, I might have never even given physical therapy a chance because I was so terrified of hurting somebody, of making a mistake.
Right. Oh, that's absolutely right. You talked about the Cassidy School and 10 years old through, senior, but even at MJP, you're working with even probably younger athletes through elite. I've heard you speak on, the difference in age-specific training and really, that there is a difference and there needs to be a different approach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, in the short time that we have, what's the general guidelines for the pre-high school, the high school, the college, the pro?
Yeah, it's a huge topic, and we're doing a ton of education. We're doing it in China now. It'll be, a shameless plug. We'll be bringing it to the States here soon. Is around our system of developing young athletes, and it's built off of old tenets of long-term athlete development, which unfortunately is more theoretical than practical. And so as a coach, I was embraced it. I was like, well, yeah, of course they're different, but if you don't really understand growth and development, you don't understand physiology and psychology of the differences between a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, it's going to be hard for you to put into practice those long-term athlete development sort of big theoretical things. And so I got really frustrated with the models that were being chunked out there. It was just giving me this general thing. And it seemed like every year a new one would come out and it was even more general than the previous one, and so it got to the point where, yeah, everything is okay to train with kids. Well, that again, as a young coach, would drive me nuts because I've got an 8-year-old that's walking in today. He's going to give me 6 weeks. He's going to give me 12 sessions to make a tangible change in their athleticism.
Right.
I know he's going to get better regardless of what I do, right? So what am I going to do? They're already doing stuff at school. They want to see a tangible result. So I got to get more strategic and tactical. I got 6 weeks, 12 sessions. I got 12 training hours with this kid. What am I going to do? And I'm going to get really, really tactical with my training age specifically. And there's pieces of the puzzle that are coming together. And your listeners are probably already ahead of the curve on a lot of the new research. I think if you like research, you want to go that way. I think Rodri Lloyd and some of the things that's coming out of his lab, his book, some great stuff there that are starting to ping some people's interests. It's interesting. Our data that we've been looking at for the last, all the way back to Cassidy days, is slapping me in the face, telling me, why weren't you paying attention? Here's the reason this was working and why this didn't work. And so we're starting to see the marriage of the research and our practical data kind of come together and say, look, there's big age brackets here of what I think the field is calling synergistic adaptation, where you can dump more gas on specific fires at specific times and get a larger realization of potential than had you just trained everything sort of concurrently and with no bias. And so I'm not saying, well, we're only going to train this and then we're going to turn that off and only train that. We're going to concurrently train the athletes like everybody always does, right, for everything. But there is absolutely big chunks of time where if you laser focus, for instance, speed, 7 to 11 years old, you're a speed coach, you got 12 sessions, go.
Right.
Okay. I wonder how many coaches would say, well, we'd probably do some acceleration and some max V. Okay, get even more laser guided than that. What percentage of your time are you going to spend in max V work versus acceleration? And then how are you going to augment that with your plyos? How are you going to augment that with the things you're doing in the weight room? Do you know that there's a synergistic adaptation for a certain type of speed development? And I'd say absolutely from this point forward that we're going to see more and more of that, those sort of things illuminated to say, wow, I should probably bias some of my training based on age around these areas of potentially synergistic adaptations. And we've had great success with that. We continue to refine that. We don't have all the answers yet, but it was a force by us from the consumer telling us that we had to get all the same results we would get in 24 sessions. I had to now get in 12.
Right.
I couldn't waste any time. And so this cool thing starts to happen where if you really focus on things that are most important, they're all important, right?
Sure.
If you focus on things that are most important at the right times, you get this great positive hangover effect in all those other things that are in waiting to develop. And you don't necessarily have to spread the peanut butter so thin that you don't taste it at all. And so when we started training like that here, because the consumer was telling us that that's what they wanted everything in smaller bits of time. My first inclination was, well, physiology says you can't do that. I'm going to wave my hands in the air and tell you how crazy you are. Well, let me go out of business, coach. It's that simple. So it forced us into this concept of, let's see if we can do it more efficiently. And what is the hangover effect going to be if we bias our training versus concurrently train and spread, or if we get too general with long-term development process? And I think that's going to be the next 10 years is going to be a continual sort of a more of a tactical approach to long-term athlete development theory that's going to help everyone from PE coaches to track coaches to performance coaches from ages 6 until 18. And I believe that's the real opportunity for us to move the human potential forward. It's not with the high performers. They're high performers. But that 6-year-old, doing everything we can to help them realize their fullest potential. I still think we're not doing that as a profession. And I think this is some of the trappings of what I think will be the future of extrapolating even more of that unrealized potential when they are 18, 19, 20.
Right.
At age 6. And heck, in China, they're asking us to start at age 3. So who knows how deep this is going to go.
Well, I think that the thing that stood out to me the most is at the very beginning, you talked about the psychology of a 6-year-old or the psychology of a 12-year-old. And that's the part I think, that we're not doing a good enough job of tapping into, really understanding, but you think about it just through kind of the first time you could dunk a ball, the very first time you could do 135, the very first time you jumped on the 12-inch box or whatever it may be, that unlocked so many different things. And, if you can keep finding what those things are to kind of build in systems to support that, it's absolutely the next step.
Yeah, kids love to get better, don't they, Coach? And that's something, whether they suck today, as long as they're version 2.0 tomorrow, they're going to have fun with that. I mean, they can still suck, but they just don't suck as bad as they did yesterday. I mean, we found a lot of success in making sure that the kids are having fun by improving.
We just got a few minutes left here, but I probably shouldn't have even approached this one right now. But everybody has something that they don't necessarily agree with that makes them, kind of stand out in the space a little bit. That for you is deceleration, the topic of deceleration, and why we're training that. Just in a minute, explain to everybody that's listening why maybe we shouldn't be focused on deceleration as much as we are.
Yeah, and maybe it's, some people say it's semantics, but all the bad things seem to happen in deceleration. All the injuries from hamstrings to ACLs. We've been training deceleration now for how many years? I did it in high school, for crying out loud. In the late 70s, I was doing deceleration training. Yet I don't know any sports where deceleration is something that's a good thing. Yet we continue to train it. So it's nothing but bad, both for injury and performance. I can't identify one sport where it's important for me to decelerate. It's important for me to change direction, though. And I think and what we're looking at here and taking some steps in our training to maybe augment a little bit is to think more about using the concept of changing direction, using acceleration instead of training deceleration. And I know people are going to say, and I'm going to get my PT colleagues in an uproar, and that's fine. I mean, target me if you want. I'm not trying to be a shock jock here.
Right.
I don't think we've got this thing figured out. And if somebody has it figured out, why haven't we cured the hamstring, the ACL? We got doctors telling us that, hey, you guys aren't doing a very good job on these ACL. I mean, the ACL is not getting any stronger.
Right.
You guys are doing all this, whatever. We're just not doing a very good job. It's the common cold of our profession, yet we keep saying it's deceleration training is the key. I'm going to stand back for a minute and say, let's at least consider the fact that maybe that's not the key. That maybe the key is acceleration training. And I know that'll be enough for people to just go, oh, great, get on Twitter and bash me, whatever. But I think it's worth spinning that topic up a little bit and not be too kind of turf warish here that we got it all figured out, because I don't think we do. And I think acceleration may have something to do with our ability to change direction better, to have better performance and also to eliminate the ACL stuff and hamstring stuff that's going on. And I think it has to do more with acceleration than it does deceleration.
Well, I agree with you. I think, sometimes it's semantics, sometimes it's just a different viewpoint or whatever. But the bottom line is this, is that innovation doesn't happen without questioning the norm, questioning the status quo. And anybody that does that, an originator or somebody that thinks outside the box, those are the people that I want to go and ask additional questions to. And that's why I wanted to bring that up, is because to me, that generates spirited conversation, but it usually leads to a better understanding by both parties. And I know you and me both, when we speak at conferences, that's the kind of stuff that those are the types of conversations that we like to have.
Yeah, we have it in side rooms because we're afraid if we stand up on stage, somebody's going to get it's not a feelings hurt thing, and it's not that I have the solution. So sometimes I'm kind of, I better not say anything because I don't have a solution. It's easy to point to the clouds and say it's raining. The village idiot can do that. I don't want to be the village idiot. I'm going to have an umbrella. Right. I've got some umbrellas, and I'm not ready to come to the table and tell you they're the cure-all yet. But believe me, I'm out there looking for solutions. Our folks are finding solutions to this, but at least we're open to the concept that a solution needs to be found, because the solution we have now is not working.
All right, smart. Well, we end the show with some resources here. Give us the best piece of coach advice you ever received.
Oh, the best. Gosh, Coach, I think Coach Jurassic is a coach of mine. He's one of my mentors and was a longtime NFL guy. And he talked about it a lot, and I still don't think I put it into practice until just recently, and that is really listen to the athlete. Yeah. And I gosh dang it, I can hear him saying that back in the early 90s. He told me that. He told me that again when I worked with him at the Dallas Cowboys. And I don't think it was until maybe a year ago that I really, really started listening to the athlete. And I think he needs to tell me that again. You need to tell me that again as a colleague. Listen to the athlete. Remind me of that, because I've heard it. I've tried to put it into practice, but I could never have enough reminders to listen to the athlete.
Awesome piece of advice. And Joe's one of the best. Give us a book, app, website recommendation.
I'm gonna go off kilter here, and you asked me this on the little pre-thing. A great website, and you don't have to like fishing, but go to this website. It's called tacticalbassin.com. And it's not about fishing for you if you're a strength coach, because you'll be like, why did he send me to a bass fishing resource? These guys are providing content to fishermen like me I suck. I love to fish, but I suck. And I mean, they are talking in a way that I understand, that I can take tools out to fishing and apply them right on the spot. They're not getting into theory and all this other mumbo jumbo. They're really just giving me tools to go out and develop confidence to be a better fisherman. And gosh darn it, I want to be that resource for coaches. And I'm not right now. But those are the types of folks that I think that are changing the landscape. They're certainly changing it for me. I would like to see more of that sort of content or that sort of approach happen in our profession, where it's truly a digital apprenticeship is really what it is. And these guys are teaching me how to catch bass. I still suck, Ron. I still suck. But I'm better than I was, and I've got so much more confidence than I did. And they come at it in a way that's so useful and practical, but also non-threatening for me, that I really have a great amount of respect for them. So it's not the actual content. Maybe it's just the way that they go about it. And maybe hopefully that'll stimulate somebody that's better at it than me to set up some of these sorts of pathways for coaches to have an apprenticeship more digitally.
That's excellent. I think, genius is taking the complex and making it simple.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And I do the exact opposite every day.
You and me both. So learning from people like that, I think is the right thing. But, man, I know you got to go. I got to go as well. But, man, I really, really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with everybody. And I'll make sure to link up all the resources. MJP's doing some phenomenal.
Thank you. Yeah. And thanks for your friendship, too. I appreciate the time we had before this call where we got to talk shop, and I encourage everybody to do that as well. It's not just a podcast. You and I have shared some pretty cool stuff today, too, in front of the podcast, so I appreciate that as well.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
That's That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.